Hello, welcome to the second episode of the playlist. Last week we talked about the basics of strings, string concatenation, casting, ints, floats, and print statements. Today we'll be discussing a little bit more about strings, for example, the length, change to uppercase to lowercase, finding a specific character in a string, and then lastly talk about conditional statements and what they are. At the end of the lesson, we will create a mini project that reflects on what we learned today to help hone our skills even further. So let's get started. So to find the length of a string, you want to use the keyword len parentheses. Now, what a keyword means is just a reserved name in the syntax of Python, which means you can't really use it when you're trying to put that name into a variable. So let's say I want to print, we have to print a print statement in order to put it out in the terminal. I want to print and find the length of my name, for example. I want to know how many letters are in my name. So if we run it, which is Control F5, is the shortcut that I use, you see that it is four letters long. That makes sense. Now, there's a thing you need to keep in mind. If you do have a space in your string, like so, and then we run it, it will come out as 5. Well, the length does count spaces in. It's called white space. It's something that you need to keep in mind when trying to find and compare the lengths of strings. Make sure that all the white space is off. Okay, that was very simple, correct? So what about changing the name to uppercase or lowercase? Well, let's do this. Put Josh. Let's make the second two letters. I'm sorry, the other two letters capital, so that we get to see the change. And let's make it very simple. You put dot lower parentheses. Now what's happening here is that Josh is a string, and strings have a class. And in this class, you have many methods. How you access those methods is through a dot in. And one of those methods happen to be lower. And make sure you always reference parentheses. Now what lower does is just going to take the string and say, hey, I want you to output it into all lowercase. So if we run it, easily, you can see that, hey, Josh is now all lowercase. And then if we go to upper, very similar, upper, save, and then run, you can see that it now changes to all uppercase. It's really simple stuff. It's really not that hard. Lowercase and uppercase, they're both mainly used for comparing strings. That's mainly all they're used for. So now let's talk about how to access a specific character in a string. Let's say I want the letter Josh, right? No, I'm sorry, the letter J in Josh. So how do I do that? Well, it's very simple. Just like that. What am I doing here? Well, I have a string, Josh. I want to reference the letter J. Now, wait a minute. So, what I do is I create this square parentheses, and then I put the number 0. Why the number 0? I thought it's supposed to be the first letter, right? So, shouldn't it be 1? Well, if we put 1, let's see what that result is. Well, it's O. Wait a minute, that makes no sense. Now, the reason why it has to be 0 and not 1 in order to get the first letter is because this is called 0 indexed. What does this mean? Well, it's very simple. What it does, it separates the string into a list, which we will talk about in another episode. And basically what it's doing is just doing this. It separates each character and then counts them from 0 and so forth, as you can see here. So that is the reason why when I put 0 in here and not 1, it'll give me the letter J. And also if I put a space here, that space will also count for a reference. For example, if I put 4 here, if I put 4 here, now that the space is there, let me just, oops, let me just print it out. You see that there's nothing there, but really, it's the space that we put. That's why it's very important to get rid of all white space. So if we delete all that, if we delete the space, and then try to run it with number 4, we get an error saying, hey, look, the index is out of range. Well, yeah, because, well, it only goes up to 3, because it's 0, 1, 2, 3. That's how you find the specific character in a string. Very simple. So now, finally, let's talk about conditional statements. What are conditional statements? Well, conditional statements allows us to give a specific set of instructions that depend on our specified input. What do I mean by that? Well, let me give you a visual example. Now, keep in mind, it's not the best drawing in the world, but here's how it goes. So, let's say my teacher assigned homework to me, and I do it. I go ahead and do it. I'm a responsible student. I finish all my work. Now, I come the next day, and my teacher asks for my work. Before I hand him over my work, what happens is he's going to run a scenario in his head. Well, if Josh does his homework, it's very simple. He'll get a 100. For now, just ignore this else if statement right here and just focus on these two. If and then the else here. So, Josh, if he does his assignment, well, he gets a 100 on it. Very simple. If not, then he'll receive an F. Well, I turn it in, and then he runs the scenario. So, Josh did do his homework. Cool. So, he gets a 100 on it. Very simple. Now, let me go collect the other students, right? Let's say I didn't do it though. I stayed up playing video games all day, did nothing, and it runs the same scenario. He's like, "Wait, he didn't do his homework. So what do we do now?" Well, I mean, he didn't do his homework, so I guess I have to give him an F. So I'll just completely discard this if statement and just go on and just give him the F, just like it does here. That's what a conditional statement does. That's all it does. It basically gets the specific input, and depending on the result of this input, it will do a specific set of instructions. For example, let's put this into a terms of coding. So I'm going to give you that visual example. Let's say we have a number, and we're going to see if it's higher than the number that we chose. So first of all, in order to make the if statement, we make if space open and close parentheses, and then the colon. What the colon does is tells Python, hey, look, this statement, I want to do something with it if it's true. So if, let's say, 0 is greater than 3, which obviously it's not, then I want you to print, this will never run. And let's say that it does. Let's say that 0, I'm sorry, let's say that it doesn't. 0 does not equal 3, or is not greater than 3. Then what I want you to print is, well, I want you to print this line. So what's going to happen here, oops, I put S there accidentally. So if we run this, we're going to see that, well, it's obviously going to be else because I print this line. But let's say that I put a number 8. 8 is greater than 3, so when I run it, this will never run. It's now printed because it's the outcome of this if statement. Now, to show you step by step, I'm going to teach you really quick what debugging is. So if you go on this number 1, right, next to the line, that statement that you made, now you see this red dot. I want you to click it. It's called the breakpoint. What you do is that once the code runs, it's gonna stop here, and then it's gonna go through each choice independently. So let's go to make sure you have the breakpoint on. It has to be bright red. Go to Run, Start Debugging, and the shortcut is F5, and then click on Python file. So now it's gonna stop, and then this command prompt comes in. Now what's going to happen here is that since we're in this statement, it's stopped here. Now we get to tell a computer when to go and when to stop, or, just stop completely. So in this statement, we see that, well, 8 is greater than 3. That logic does make sense. So if we run this, which is a step over, we see that it now is going to run this print statement. And if we do it one more time, it has been run. Well, let's put it to the original example. Let's see it was 0. And then we run in debug mode. It stops here, looks at the logic, realizes that the logic is false, so this if statement is false, and it completely skips this print, and then go straight to else. And else doesn't really have anything here, so it just runs completely what it has, which is this print statement of print this line. So if we print it, there you go. Now, let's say that this choice, the number we have, is not greater than 0, but is less than another number. Well, if we need another choice, we use an else if. And if we go back to our original example, this is what I have here. Let's say I did my homework, right? Or I was doing my homework, then I got distracted and I started playing games, video games. So I did half of the work. I come the next day, I give it to him, to my teacher. He sees that I did do my homework, but I didn't complete it. So he's not going to give me 100 on this assignment. But I did do half of it, so I guess he'll just give me 50 for the work that I've done. And then he'll completely disregard this other else statement. That is what's called an else if. Else if are just other options in this if else statement. So we can do the same thing here in coding. It's very weird how they put it. It's ELIF for elif. That's their else if. Parentheses because we want to put an option here. And then the colon to put, well, what we want the set of instructions to be. So 0 is greater than 3, but let's say 0 is less than -1, right? We put the -1 there. And if we print this run, and if we print it out, let me not do it with debug so we can see, right? Obviously that doesn't work because 5 is greater than 3. I'm sorry. Let's put 5 is greater than 3. Let's make, I'm sorry, -5. Obviously, something is not right here. There we go. That's what I meant to do. Now let's run it again. We can see that this does run because -5 is less than -1. Sorry, I just had a brain fart moment there. So let's go back into debugging and see why that worked. So if we start debugging and go here, well, we see that, hey, this logic 0 is greater than 3. That doesn't work at all. Why is this here? It's false, right? So it's gonna say, you know what? I'm not even gonna look at this print statement because this is wrong. Now we go to this other choice. See how we went to this other choice and not straight to else? So we see -5 is less than -1. That is true. It's true. So let's run this print statement. And it does, but that's all it runs. Because the choices have been laid out and it chose the option, what it wants to do. Hence we have the outcome of this run. Now, we're going to do our mini project now. It's very quick, very simple. We're going to say, hello there. What is your name? And we're going to get, also, we need to put an input. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I didn't show you guys this. An input is just basically, I want you to write into the terminal, and whatever the user puts in the terminal, like let's say I put the name Josh, and then I press enter, what it's going to do then is just going to, obviously this is an error, but if we put the input, then it's going to make whatever variable that we set it to, for example, name equals input, then it will create Josh into that name variable. So let's say I want to compare your name length and then just see if it's long or short. Very simple. So it's going to be a simple if statement. If the length of name equals to, or I'm sorry, is greater than 2. Let's go with 2. Then what I want you to do is just say print, hey, your name is kind of long. And then if that is false, then say, hey, your name is pretty short. Actually, now let's make it greater than. Let's go with 5, right? So if we run this and we put, let's go without debugging quickly. Hello there, what is your name? Oh, my name is Josh. And then I press enter, then, hey, your name is pretty short. Oh, well, thanks, I guess, right? But let's run it again. And oops, let me not do it with debugging. Or, you know what, let me just show you with debugging what's going on. I didn't put the breakpoint where I wanted to, just give me a second. Okay, let's start it all the way at the beginning. Let's start debugging here. Python file. Okay, so it stops here saying, okay, we're gonna get an input from the user right now. Okay, let's put Josh, right? Press enter. Okay, now we're in this if statement. Well, whatever name is, just like I put it here, is Josh, right here, as you can see. So if I hover over name, there you go, it's Josh. So if the length of Josh is greater than 5, then I want you to say, hey, that name is kind of long. But since since len isn't 0 indexed, it's not going to be 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, like how it originally was. It's going to be 4. So once we see that, it's going to be like, oh, wait, you know what? This name is not greater than 5. Definitely not. So let's say, hey, your name is pretty short. That's the other outcome. Just like so. Let's say instead of Josh, let me run it without debugging this time. Let's say my name was Jonathan. Hey, your name is kind of long. Well, yeah, it's greater than 5 letters. So just like this, stuff like this is very simple. I would suggest trying practicing with other scenarios, like getting the name of it and then comparing it to another string. Let's say I have another input here, and then say, what about your friend's name or something like that? Hey, you guys' names is kind of short or long. And then you just practice with that, learn to really express yourself with these statements because you're going to be running with these a lot. But that is all. And we'll see you in the next episode, which we'll talk about lists.